Hey, this is Jana from Curl Together, and this week I want to talk about joining two skeins together. So by now, many of you that are doing our cardigan knit along sweater, you've knitted through your first skein of yarn and now you're ready to join the second one. And so you need a good way to do that, maybe that's a little less obvious than just tying a good old square knot. So what follows is my personal preference for how to go about joining two skeins, in the middle of your work, that I feel like is the least noticeable. So you're not leaving a big bump or a big knot right in the back of your sweater or, the sleeve or somewhere super obvious. If I'm just making, say I'm making squares that I'm going to seam together, like if I'm doing an Afghan sampler or something like that where I have pieces to seam together, then I might go ahead and use a square knot on the edge of that piece that's going to join to the next one because it'll be sewn inside the seam and you would never see it. That's probably the one exception where I'd be willing to actually tie a knot and do that. There's several techniques out there. I don't claim to know them all. I'm just going to share with you the one that I find works best for me and that I kind of my go-to method over and over and over. Okay, let's get to it. I am knitting a sweater and I need now to add another skein. I've knitted all of the first one. So there's a couple options. One, I can just simply lay the new skein next to this one, hold these two strands together and continue knitting. You can certainly do that, especially if it's on the back of a sweater. It's not going to receive a lot of friction or wear like a sock would, for example. And that's okay. It's not my preferred method. Some people will also just tie a square knot and continue on, and they'll just make sure to weave in the ends. Again, since the back of my sweater is just nothing but stockinette stitch, I feel like a knot would be noticeable, and I think that's a little tacky. I don't really want to do that. So I'm going to show you what is the rush and join. And let me just say there are many ways to go about attaching a new skein of yarn. This is just my preference. So I'm going to just cut that off and make a cleaner edge. All right, I've selected a needle here that is quite a bit smaller. But the reason I wanted to do that, to use this, if I can get the yarn even through the eye, it's pretty tight. There we go. The reason I want to do this is because I want this to be small enough to fit inside this twist. So I've threaded this on. I don't have a great long tail. And what I'm going to do, hopefully you can see that, is I'm going to take this needle and I'm going to thread it inside this twist if I can. So basically the plies of yarn are going around the needle. I'm trying to get my needle inside the inside of those twists. So it's a little finicky. Then what I want to do is pull this through. I'm pulling the tail inside the twist. And I've left a little bit of a loop there. Now I'll trim this off later. I'll worry about that later. But what happens when you pull this, it tightens down on itself. Then I'm going to take my new skein, right? I'm going to put my new skein in through here. All right, and I'm kind of interlocking that. All right. So now I'm going to thread let me make that a little easier to thread on my needle. All right, now on this end, I'm going to do the same thing. I have it threaded through the loop I made a little bit ago. And I don't want to make this loop very big. So I'm going to do the same thing where I'm just going to leave a little bit of a smaller tail here. I'm going to ignore this and I'm going to double the strand back on itself and try to thread the needle through the core of this ply. Does that even make sense? I hope so. So it helps to bunch it up a little bit. You can see it's kind of springy. So it helps to bunch it up a little bit so that you can manipulate the needle into the center of the plies of yarn. So I want to get out on there an inch and a half or so. And it's not going to be perfect, and nothing ever is, right? That's okay. So I'm going to just pull that through until I can get the needle off. There we go. So that's pretty smooth. I mean, you'll feel a tiny little bit of a bump where those two loops intersect. But then I'm just going to carry on knitting. If I need to, you know, you can actually trim this really close now to the exit point of the skein. You can trim that. You can also just leave it and then weave it in later. I kind of wait and see what it looks like, and then I trim it closer. But let me show you. Let me knit a little bit, and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, you can see that right here is the doubled up area. So I'll show you what it looks like when I come back and do another row. All right, now I've knitted back across to the point at which I joined that new skein. So let's take a look and see how transparent or not that really is. Here's our two tail ends that need to be either trimmed or woven in. And, you know, I think it looks pretty good. You can see, I mean, you can feel that there's a little bit of thickening where the double strands are, where that actually joins. But honestly, there's really no way around that. And I do think that that's pretty hidden. It's certainly not as obtrusive as a square knot would be. So that's the Russian join. And again, that's my favorite way of adding a new skein onto the tail end of the one you're just finishing. All right, as always, like and subscribe if you found this video helpful, and drop me a comment down below. If you have any questions, feel free to join our Facebook and Ravelry groups. The links are down below in the video description. Thanks for watching.